when you only frame that in terms of a cost, that's a real missed opportunity. I think about automobiles. Just a few short years ago, every year we'd use more oil in the United States, year after year. And the thought that we were going to figure out how to use less even one year was like the end of the world. Well, now we have been using less. We changed the way we drive. We changed the cars that we use. Policy played a role in helping with that. $4 gas, the economy played a role. But we actually shifted after decades and changed. And now we're asking, we're not going to have enough money to fix roads because it was all tapped to gas, and now we're going to be using less gas. So that didn't, you know, the whole thing didn't fall apart. Our whole economy didn't fall apart. There were some losers in that, but there were also a lot of winners. And I think at the end of the game, at the end of the day, that shift has been positive. So when we think about how we're going to address climate change, that shift can be quite positive as well. And one thing I failed to mention when I started was I farmed with my husband, but I also work here at Drake in the Agricultural Law Center. So for the students here at Drake, if you go to the Ag Law Center, you can find my name, and I certainly am happy to be a resource for you as you're thinking about papers and things like that. But
Reverend Guy, I'm going to give you a little bit of a different title now. You're Emperor Guy. And you can do whatever you want to deal with climate change. What would be the first couple of things you would do?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we have to deal with in the United States is the amount of carbon pollution that we put out into the atmosphere. And so going back actually to your earlier question about the President's climate plan, I think that we're on the right track with dealing with this, in dealing with carbon pollution. And one of the efforts that's come out of that is in reducing carbon pollution from both new power plants and then existing power plants. And that is part of the President's plan that is going into effect. And so I would actually follow those very measures that the President has laid out in his climate plan. First of all, to deal with carbon pollution from new power plants, those that have not yet been built and are not up and running. And then to come up with the next step of the plan, which is looking at existing power plants. Those power plants put 40% of our carbon pollution into the atmosphere, and we have to get those numbers under control if we're going to effectively deal with climate change in this country.
David, same question to you. You're now Emperor of the world, and you can do whatever you want to cure climate change. What are the first couple of things you would do?
Right. Well, I don't even have to be the Emperor of the world. I can just be Emperor of the United States and get most of the way there. But what I would do is I would start with a climate tax or a carbon tax, and I'd make it very simple. You know, you pay a certain amount per ton emitted into the atmosphere. You take that money that you get from the carbon tax, and you use it either to, well, let's just say you use it to cut other taxes, right? So you offset a tax that's perhaps hurting the economy, like income tax or something like that. You can use it wherever you want, but you find the tax that you hate the most and you pay it off with the carbon tax. Now the advantage of that is that you're not taking money out of the economy, you're not destroying the economy, you're just taxing something else. But what you're taxing is something that is bad, right? Something that is causing damage. In fact, there was a study last week, and I wish I could remember, I think it was National Academies, but I could be wrong, but a study that came out. They pretty carefully identified the costs of coal emissions and determined that even if you don't care about climate change, getting rid of coal emissions, cutting carbon that way is a huge economic boom because you have less sickness and so on and so forth. Like there are all kinds of other things that coal is doing other than damaging climate that you do well to do without it anyway. So the point is, have a tax. But don't use the tax to, if you don't like socialism, don't use the tax to, just tax people more. Use the tax to pay off other things. And then, once you've done that, you can tell the Chinese, look, I'm going to put a tariff on incoming goods unless you tax your carbon as well. And then you don't have to worry about things being unequal because China needs to import to us. And I realize that there are problems with the WTO there, but I'm emperor, so I can do it. But I feel like the United States gets started with a tax that doesn't actually increase taxes, and suddenly it's easy to make it to make that a global effort.
Mr. Costello, I thought I saw a smile when the word tax came up.
Maybe we just reduce the deficit so that these young people don't graduate with
You can
$50,000 debt.
do whatever you want with the money, I don't care.
Okay. I think what I do is probably start with getting away from truck transportation as much as we can, or converting the country's truck fleet to natural gas. Might help if we could extract natural gas around the country. The president seems to be opposed to that, even though it's among the cleanest forms of energy we've got, and it's abundant. And if we were to allow more extraction of natural gas, we could be energy independent by 2024 or so, which is 11 years away. So I think that's one place we could start. But I definitely think rail holds a lot more potential for moving goods around the country at a much more energy efficient pace. I'm not sure that the carbon tax is the answer, although it certainly would be worth looking at if you could strike a deal that would maybe make Republicans happy on the deficit or on other taxes. Of course, we love our tax cuts. So.
Mr. Link, let's go to you real quickly, because we only have a few minutes left. What can individuals do? What's the most important thing individuals can do to deal with this issue?
I think, I don't know on the science front. Dave probably is better to answer the question, but I think certainly there's conservation measures and things you can do in your own household, in your own life to reduce your own carbon footprint. I think that would be a good first start, and I don't think it always has to be looking for the government to solve the problem. It's like you're doing on your farm. If collectively everyone takes a small step, I think it might have a big impact on the problem.
Mr. Brown, same question to you. What would you tell an individual they can do to help deal with this problem?
Well, I think that it definitely starts with the individual, and first of all, just reusing, recycling, reducing the amount used. That goes for paper, plastic, newspaper, glass, aluminum cans. Secondly, use less heat, air conditioning, just by insulating walls in the attics. It'll save money too, and some of these things, it doesn't just help the environment, but there's a personal incentive because it'll save money when it comes to time to pay the bills. Another thing is to drive less and smarts. If you can get by with carpooling, things like that's something that we can support. Of course, it's difficult to do, but I think that the more we get in the habit of doing that it can help. There's the other things that we can do is use less hot water. You can just turn the off switch. There's so many appliances around the house that if you turn things off, that'll help. Plant trees in your yard. In terms of political, since I was the co-chair, politically you can talk to your representatives about it, go to forums like these, and let them know that you care about it and that this is an issue to you. I think that's a very important thing that you can do.
Mr. Russell, you are doing some things, but I think you would agree that probably a minority of people are doing serious work on this. What's your advice to somebody who comes up here and says, what can I do?
I'm thinking about maybe in three things. One is, what are you doing personally? So, we're driving a little bit less than we used to. We're driving different cars, and it's made a difference. And so just asking yourself, back to what Chad said, what am I doing in my day-to-day life? Can I make some changes? And I'm not going to fix it. But me making a few changes isn't going to fix it. But if we all did as a country, huge implications. So don't let the fact that not everybody's doing it yet prevent you from doing what you can do. So do your own thing in your own life. Also advocate. We live in a democracy, and I like that a lot. I think we're very lucky to live in a country that is democratic and we can voice our opinions. So be an activist. So if you're going to do some changes that would make a difference if everybody does, share that with people and ask for policy changes that will incentivize and encourage that kind of behavior. And then the third thing is, particularly for the young people in the room, figure out how this paradigm shift fits into your career. So what are the opportunities to go down a career path where you're part of a solution, where you're part of the cutting edge, where you're part of innovating for the next American century, that we solve this problem and don't let somebody else do it.
Reverend Guy, that question to you, somebody comes up to you and says, what is it that I can do as an individual? What would you tell them?
Wow, I think we heard some great things already. I mean, I would echo those. At Iowa IPL, we run a couple of programs that teach energy efficiency to householders. So we actually advocate for very easy steps that people can take in their homes and in their places of worship. And you know, we may think it's silly to talk about things like making sure you turn out the light when you leave a room, or recycling your water bottle, or not using a water bottle, or just simple things like adjusting your thermostat. But the truth is that so many people are not doing those things, and if we all did take those steps, it would make a huge difference. But also, I think it's really important to talk about the advocacy component. We really need people to use their voices and to let legislators know that this isn't just an issue that you care about, that this is a voting issue for you. Because if they know that you are going to vote on this issue, it's going to make a huge difference in their outlook on the importance of taking action on climate change and its solutions, and all of the ways that we can support those solutions together.
And David, I'll let you be the last voice on this. Let's say a student comes to you and says, what is it that I can do when I go out in that big bad world out there? What would you tell them?
And I'm going to disappoint Jeff and everybody else, because I'm going to say, just care, right? Just care about it. And figure out what works, right? But yeah, there are all kinds of things you can do. You can, you know, as far as changing your thermostat and so on. But we're not going to solve climate change unless we unless there's sort of a social demand. I guess I should say, we're not going to change the climate. We're not going to solve climate change unless we get really lucky and there's a nice scientific solution that just happens to work and be cheap, which could happen, or that there's a social movement. And the way social movements happen is people care. So you know, that's essentially right. Just care.
Well, we've reached the end of our scheduled time, so sorry about that. We've reached the end of our scheduled time. I'm fairly sure that the panel members would be willing to hang around and talk to you. But first of all, I'd like to thank them for being here, and thank you for coming.